Welcome to today's episode of the AI to ROI podcast. Today, I'm joined by Zhang, the Chief Business Officer and Chief Financial Officer at ClickUp. Dan and I will be exploring and covering 5 topics today. The catalyst for the expanded AI charter at ClickUp, why the CFO is uniquely positioned to lead AI transformation, how to identify which AI initiatives are actually working. Fourth, what it takes to move hundreds of knowledge worker roles at once, not just individuals adopting an AI tool. And lastly, how Dan is turning 100X into a real blueprint and framework with measurable financial outcomes. So with that, Dan, we're going to cover a lot in 30 minutes. Hope we can do it. Could you take a moment and give a brief overview of your background to our listening audience?
Thank you for having me on the podcast, Ray. So I zigzagged my way into the CFO role. My prior life was a stack of jobs that just didn't add up in a traditional career lens. I started out as a journalist, and I also did some entry-level selling, which was a very humbling experience. And then I came to the States for business school, and then I got into finance. And right when the path looked straight, that I took a detour to take on the very first generation of the RevOps role. So back before the title even really existed, this was more than 10 years ago. And then I came back to the finance track. So I would say my history, because since we're on this AI topic, has really evolved since I took on the CFO seats. In 2024, I was mostly like tinkering individual productivity hacks. And last year, in 25, it moved to how do I move my team, right? The team level productivity. And then this year, that is the organizational-wide AI transformation. How do I see the results coming up in my financial statement, P&L statement? So I think that's a totally different animal that I'm happy to share some of the real lessons and voice from operators on this show today.
Look forward to that. I did not know about their RevOps background. I don't know if you know, but I created a company called RevOps Squared back in 2008.
Oh, wow.
And then when I first founded Benchmark, we actually called ourselves RevOps Squared, but we were doing mostly benchmarking, so I evolved it to Benchmark. But I love that zigzag role because I think it's the best way to become a true well-rounded business executive. And you fit that role because you're not only a CFO, you're a chief business officer, and you're leading the AI transformation at ClickUp using something that you call the 100X org. So can you tell me what was a catalyst for structuring the AI mandate this way?
I would say we came to this mandate, kind of learned the lesson in a hard way. Then we tried both extremes and both failed. So first is we ran like the top-down mandate, right? The CEO and all the C-suites, we just make it non-negotiable. AI is absolutely number one priority. All hands was AI, everyone just go. And then we swan to the bottoms up, right? The thousands flowers blooming, hackathons everywhere, tokens burning, big showrooms of people, demoing the cool stuff. And it felt great. And last year, we did it for a whole year. And then me and the CEO, we sat down and we looked at what we actually got, like what is actually being put into the production. And it was not pretty. And it's token wasted. It's people burned out. And we have an issue that's called the agent sprawl, right? Just like, you have a thing called work sprawl, you have fragmented tools and context. Now you have agents running around in your workspace, in your email, providing, slops and burying the real human inputs. And I think what's more important is we realized that there is an anxious and insecure workforce that couldn't tell if the AI thing is a tool or a threat. So that's when it clicked for us that you cannot drive it from only the bottom or purely kind of let it experiment. And because the CEO mandate just dies in the middle, right? It really needs someone to kind of move the middle in order for AI to move the needle. And so that's what we discussed, like, hey, how about put the CFO in charge? Because we naturally already see everything in the business, the inputs and outputs. And we're the person in charge of translating of the strategy into the execution. So that's where we came to this conclusion, is just to expand the CFO scope to be the driving the end-to-end AI transformation for the entire company.
Well, I personally love it because I believe that generating true financial outcomes that actually show up on the income statement is the way to do it. But this is non-traditional from what I've seen, Dan, and maybe nothing's traditional AI yet, but I see a lot of companies your size, kind of that 200 million to billion, they're investing in a chief AI officer role versus having an existing executive like the CFO expand their responsibilities. Tell me a little bit about, did you think about a dedicated role versus expanding your own?
We also explore the options of having a more kind of technical background. We did have like the AI engineering leader kind of dedicated to providing internal and external AI product. But what's missing based on the operating lessons I've shared is the organizational design, is the change management, and you need to change the overall like incentives design for the company, right? So the people can finally answer the question, what's in it for me? And especially the best performers on the team, now they're the most leaning on the AI deployment. You got to face them head on because like they're automating themselves out of the job, right? If they ask the question, what's in it for me? What is the corporate response to that? So there are so many fundamental different principles and designs that we need to do to rebuild the business from the ground up. We don't think the AI transformation is a technology problem. We think it's a fundamental business design problem.
Oh, that's interesting. So when that functional executive, doesn't matter what department, whether it's marketing or R&D, and they come to you and say, hey, I'm thinking about this AI initiative, right? Here's the scope of it. Here's how I'm going to measure the benefit. Do you ask them or do you have a process in place now? It's like, go back and redesign the organization structure before we approve that, even from a proof of concept or pilot? Or how do you do that?
Actually, I have a real story for that. Is less of the internal team that is very applicable to my real internal discussion is actually with a customer. So I recently had a meeting with the executive at one of our enterprise customer. She was under real pressure because the CEO was breathing down her neck to show the AI strategy and the outcome. So we sat down and instead of pitching our product, ClickUp, which I believe can help her get there, I asked one question. What are the most important jobs to be done in your function that most needed to be transformed? And nobody in the room with all her bench could answer that. And that told us that they didn't have an AI problem. They had a work redesign problem, right? Because the AI FOMO was real, but it had nothing to point at, right? It's like you want to buy a fancy Italian furniture, but your house still has 3 beat up couches with popcorns like in a cushion. So get your house in order first. So that's where the actual work starts, that we brought in the AI operating model framework for this executive from the jobs to be done, right? The primary jobs to be done. Because in an organization, there's only very few primary jobs that really move the needle and everything else is secondary. And if you let it like do from the bottoms up, you know what? It's a secondary work gets AIified. Like very few people can touch the primary work, right? But that's where AI can get the most of the leverage there. That's the unglamorous plumbing, right? It's the good old process mapping, putting the measurement in space, and it's all opposite to the flashy AI capability. So like I think that for any executive coming to me and getting the help of either the resource or the guidance, I'll help them do this brain work first, right? Is show me what your job's to be done, and then we can see how we can reverse it to let AI do the fundamental work and then put your human resource on the edge of it.
Okay, so redesign the fundamental underlying process, redesign the human impact and input into that. But here's a big thing I see missing a lot, Dan. When you think about redesigning the job to be done, it ends with some operational KPIs you're going to impact. Something as simple as, hey, customer service is going to use AI to try to deflect or automate more case resolutions, right? Or ticket resolutions. It's like, hey, I reduced my human labor by 50%, but it doesn't quite pull the thread through to, I reduced my expenses in customer service by $3 million. Do you kind of force that pulling your thread all the way to cost reduction or revenue increase?
Listen, I know everyone wants a very clean scientific formula to measure the short-term AI ROI, but I think that the blunt truth here is it does not exist yet because this tech is too new and the adoption is too early. I have a psychological test for the ultimate ROI on AI. Is, Ray, would you pay for AI on your own dime?
It's a great question.
That's it, right? Forget the funny ROI math that if the company stopped paying AI tomorrow, would you reach into your own pocket for Claude or Codex? I would. My usage is probably way lower than a frontline power user, but it's still no brainer for me. Like, take my money. I was on the $100, $200 a month, like personal plan before we start to kind of expensive. So ask yourself, when was the last true painkiller in the software generation? Right, we're like the veteran in the software, and when was the last time the software showed up and you will pay for it with your own money and to make your work and make your life easier? So that's the tell. But now I do think it will eventually show up in your numbers, and we measure it by ARR per headcount. But it is not a metric that moves on the weekly or monthly or even quarterly level because, like I said, it's moving people, right? It's changing organizational design for out years. It's an annual and out year time horizon, right? For example, in the last 12 months, we 2x'd our ARR per headcount just in the last 12 months. And we have already changed our guidance for next year's planning. Over half of the function will not have new headcount. When was the last time we as a CFO talking to the other C-suite, hey, business is going to grow 50%, you have zero headcount? They would be like, great, I have confidence to deliver that. Right? But this time that it all changed, I've never seen that kind of confidence that leaders would be like, yeah, I don't need new headcount. My comfort is like, I'm going to scale AI instead of scaling the bodies. Right? So those are the real changes that we're seeing in the business, but it's more on the slightly longer horizon.
You know, it's funny. I did a case study on Klarna, and that was one of their big inputs or impacts. They went from 385 of revenue per FTE to over $1 million in a 2-year period because of that. But Dan, at a CFO level, I really think that is a lagging indicator. It's going to be really important. But how do you get that SVP of a function to kind of look at you and say, hey, I have 50 employees today for 100 million of revenue. I'm just making the number up. And tomorrow I'm going to have that same 50 employees for 150 million of revenue. Do you take it down to the departmental like that on a headcount per dollar of revenue?
I think that every job functions is different. For example, for back office, right? Obviously, some of the operations and accounting, financial processes are way more ready for AI than in a frontline sales job, right? But like within the sales department, you have your like human on the edge interacting with the customer, which AI cannot replace yet. But you have this huge support cast, right? Your ops team, your enablement team, your the overall we call the sales ecosystem team. That's where the process is heavy. That a lot of mundane, repetitive work there. So I think that those teams were probably more ready for kind of AI efficiency optimization than the frontline tier. So overall, your sales department will still get 20% more efficient, but it's not evenly distributed. You need to map the AI capabilities to where your human is actually adding that last mile of the judgment and inputs.
Got you. So one of the challenges a lot of companies have talked about over the last 24 months is not moving beyond proof of concepts or pilots to initial, I won't say full scale, but broader deployment and then ultimately full scale deployment. Do you have milestones or a metric infrastructure or measurement system that says, yes, this AI project can move from proof of concept to initial deployment and full deployment? Or is that case by case?
I think that for now, you can actually tell if AI deployment is a showcase, like a show horse, or a true something that's kind of moving the needle, is you look at how their leaders talk about AI adoption. So some of the leaders that they talks about the volume, and those are the experimentation leaders, right? The real adoption leaders, they talk about the impact. I'll give you some examples. You will hear people are saying that we built 27 agents, like for my just one team, or this automated, millions of the processes that my team had. But my point is, like, those are activities, right? Those numbers sounds impressive, but they're just inputs, and they're not pointing any of the outputs. So it's the classic, like, the motion mistakes for progress. But the real adoption, they talks about the impact. They lead with the business language, not the AI language, right? So if I tell you that I've shortened my time to close the book from 8 days to 5 days, like, that is like how I deploy a technology to change my business results. The technology happened to be AI, right? So in other functional leaders, language, that if a post-sales leader is telling me that, hey, my time to measured value delivery for the customer has gone from 2 months to like 4 weeks. And then AI was the technology that helped me get there, right? You see like what they lead with.
And that I'll call that an operational KPI, time to value, decreasing by 50%. That's wonderful. So right now, at this stage, if those are the type of outcomes that a functional leader are measuring, you're happy with that because it's still too early to tell how that's going to translate into true income statement impact, right? That's what I'm hearing. There's operating.
But I will challenge them on, you got to start from jobs to be done. Without the proper mapping to the jobs to be done, a lot of them are just theater, or a lot of them are inputs. How do you show me like what's coming out of it, right? So every department internally, I go to them and say, show me the job mapping. In each of the jobs to be done, there is AI specified skills, right? And then those skills needs to be managed by the best performers on the team. And then we put the agent governance model on top of it. So I know like on the cost, right? So I know the cost what's coming in, and then I look at the jobs to be done. There are 60% of the jobs to be done now fully automated by AI, not human headcount. It's just a matter of time that will get translated into the financial statement and P&L in the long term.
Got you. So it sounds like in the last year or so, you went beyond primary getting individual productivity to true business transformation, more of a systemic kind of systems thinking orientation. Can I ask you a question? What does that really take to get that ethos and culture into your executive teams? How do you help them move from my people are more productive to my systems are more efficient and productive? Does that make sense, the question?
Like move every executive along on this journey.
Yeah, and is there all around jobs to be done? It sounds like that might be the grounding mechanism for you.
I think that because no one has figured this out yet, we're not, the one shows up with the most like absolutely accurate playbook and everyone just run with it. Like I said, we learned it the hard way, right? And on the foundation of the battle scars and, some of the horror stories that we've had, kind of anchoring back to the two examples I gave, we tried purely like bottoms up, just people experiment and see what comes out of it. That leads to a lot of waste and leads to a burnout employees. And we also tried the top staff, right? And people just like, shouting from the mountaintop, the C-suite, and nothing actually gets done. And it becomes very, it's too high level. And then we kind of come to converge on the same conclusion that we got to start from the thing that really mattered, is our KPI, is our day-to-day job, right? The CRO's job is to move the revenue, and the chief customer officer's job is to make sure customers are happy, engagement is high. My job is to manage, cash and efficiencies and unit economics. Can we do the forecast more accurately? So tying back to our job, that gives the executive actually the peace of mind at night, right? They can sleep better at night They know that they're not burning tokens just for the sake of burning. And they also know their best assets, which is their best people's energy, is going to the thing that matters the most. And you're supercharging them with AI, not with some like fringe task, right? So you know what those fringe task is. Look at this agent that read 3 documents and connect it to 7 systems and send me this readout. So what? Like, what has it moved, right? And we're way past that stage now.
Well, let me ask, because one of the challenges with large scale AI deployments, we know that the investment precedes the financial benefit, right? And especially when we do have a little bit of token maxing, it's not very token maxing, it's I got to build 5 agents. How do you as a CFO think about my cost on AI for a period of time is going to have a steeper slope than the revenue or cost decrease impact? Are you willing to take an operating margin hit knowing that you're moving towards better productivity over time?
I think that's the classic like J curve, right? Is for the initial adoption and experimentation that there will be some mistakes knowingly. There would be some calculated risk taken that could lead to some waste by design, right? But here is a key difference. I talk to a lot of CFOs, and I think the real anxiety under the ROI question isn't on the R, it's on the I. Because the benefit of AI is so obvious, right? So my psychological test of would you pay it on your own dime? 100% of people will say yes, but their question is, are you confident in your cost management? And that is the whole discipline, right? It's the good old non-flashy guardrails, monitoring, internal policy. What jobs got more tokens? What jobs got no tokens? Have you forced that clarity in your companies? I don't think that every job deserves to put AI on or agents on, right? But I would rather put 80% of my token investment to the things that's actually going to become my company's competitive advantage, right? So if your team's token spend keeps you up at night, I don't think that's an AI problem. It just probably means that you didn't put a proper guideline in place. So go put them in and then never think about it again. And you just encourage your team to pursue the upside. It's like, I think it's a job for CFO to put in that safety net for the business.
I think that's a really important point because I find so many companies don't instrument the cost visibility into
Right.
token consumption, or it's not just token consumption. It's also sometimes my database costs go up, my network egress costs go up. Have you instrumented kind of that AI cost visibility infrastructure down to a discrete project by project basis, or is that a work in progress?
So we're on the individual level, right? But to my prior points, the individual's work is tying to a skills, is tying to a jobs to be done. Okay. So we have a bird's eye view of where the token is flowing into. We want the 80-20. We want the 80% of the tokens to go to the 20% most important jobs in the company. So that's step one is, do you have a centralized visibility? Sometimes, most of the time, you need the engineering's help. For me, is we have someone very technical savvy on the team, vibe coded a central visibility of all the AI toolings that we use, right? From Cursor to Replit to Codex and Cloud Code, and also internal AI usage, because ClickUp is an AI productivity tool. So we just merge the external usage and internal usage that gives us like the God's view into like everything that people is hitting on. And sometimes then I will say I'm pleasantly surprised that we'll see a pocket of the token increase. But we can, because we're monitoring on a daily basis, we can see that, and we'll go ask the person is, hey, what are you building? And usually your team is at this level, you're at this level, and the person will show us, hey, I'm like trying to experiment something, and I think it's pretty interesting. We're like, this is an important jobs to be done, to be added to the catalog, right? So you're still having that bottoms up. You're not, suffocating the overall freedom of building on the bottoms up, but you can catch them when they're happening, right? And guide them in the right way. So I always see this whole policy is less of a governance, is more like a guideline. You got to guide your team. What is the good things to build, and what are the good ways to build as well?
But a key thing I heard you say is you do have real time or at least daily visibility into your cost, your AI cost. So you don't wait till the end of the month and say, oh, we're over by 200%. You know day to day how you're performing against the AI cost budget.
That's the worst news the CFO can ever get, right? You're reacting to an overspend. It's just a punch in the gut. And I try not to have it. Yeah.
I just conducted research with enterprise class companies, almost 500, and over 50% said they had missed their AI spend budget by 25% or more. They were spending more, 25% more than they had budgeted. So you're unique if you're not in that camp.
So it's somewhere like doing that quarter, doing that month, that there's got to be the signal for them. If they don't have the cost monitoring, at least they should have the usage monitoring to know that's a leading indicator we're going to go over. Right.
And Dan, who owns that? Who owns to make sure that? Is that you? Is that your IT organization? How do you ensure that infrastructure is in place?
It's a close partnership between my procurement leader and the IT leader, and we have accounting leaders providing that the cost visibility. Because if you think about it, all this data and signal and contacts, they do sit in 3 or 4 different departments, right? And that's another reason why you need to have a C-suite leader who can own this entire thing, so you can pull in the right team, the right thread, and they can get it together. It doesn't exist by default. It's probably some vendor out there who can do this for you, but if you want to build it in-house, someone needs to kind of see the entire battlefield.
Yeah, I agree. And the CFO is uniquely positioned. Okay, we're almost up on our 30 minutes, so I'm going to zoom back up. We talked about the 100X org, but we really didn't talk about how that came about. And is that kind of a rallying cry? What does 100X really mean?
I can share a bit of the backstories there. So let's talk about the identity of the business, right? So we're not a legacy company. So check our birth certificate. We were like 7 or 8 years old, right? Only a few years old. I once heard an investor call the company built before 2022 like a pre-agentic business. And I will admit that it really kind of stings a little. But that's exactly where we are, right? We built a business just before AI was a real thing. So that we kind of live in this awkward middle that we have 100 million in revenue, a couple 100,000 customers, we have close to 1,000 employees, and we have real functions. There are full-blown functions on top of very complex systems and business processes that already work. So when we're facing all these internal challenges, I went looking for the playbook, right? I hope someone has already solved this. I listened to every AI transformation podcast and I read every blog that I can find. And unfortunately, like there are only 2 camps that are talking about this topic. So the first one is like the YC crowd, right? They're telling you build an AI native company with the 3 people's company. So that's not the problem we have. And the second camp are the big consulting, Big Fours, McKinsey's, right? They're selling the AI transformation. So we decided to carve our own path and honestly do it public, right? Sharing the hard lessons we learned, sharing like the traps and sharing, don't get tripped on this. Which is, I think that the opposite of 100X is bolting AI onto a human-driven organization. So you just sprinkle like tools and tokens on top of the workflow that's still in people's heads. But the 100X org, flip it. So you got to rebuild your foundation. Technical foundation, you got to rebuild your culture to make your foundation, the AI legible, so that AI can run that fat middle of running your workflow, running your day-to-day, and then you deploy your most valuable human asset on the edge of it, right? They are the one reaching to the real world, bringing in the context that the AI, the brain doesn't have. That's the biggest value of, I think, the human resource as an investment into the business. So that's kind of the thesis of how we design the 100X org, because I truly believe that in the next 3 to 5 years, we can pretty much keep the size of the business and everyone will work more effectively and happily because we're creating new roles for them. And the business can 3x or 5x in the time horizon. So that's the kind of North Star that we're marching towards.
Well, it's funny. I kind of used to call companies either AI native or legacy SaaS. And I said, no, we have AI first in that middle. And AI first are legacy platform vendors who now have an AI first culture and product. And I think recently Intercom Defend is a perfect example, or maybe, use case to somebody who did it really well.
Yes. Yep.
And it's great to see you on your way. Okay, we're going to wrap this up with a couple fast rapid fire questions. So, and this is a hard one. Who owns measuring the actual benefits received from the AI investments? At the end of the day, who's responsible for that? Is it the CFO or is it the executive leader in the function?
It should be owned by CFO, but with a close partnership with the other functional executives. Because at the end of the day, AI decision is an investment decision, right? So CFO should be the one set the hurdle rates and ultimately measuring like what's being translating into the bottom line and top line.
Second question is, and you've mentioned the jobs to be done, so I think you might go here, but are there 2 or 3 key variables that you'd recommend to the CFOs listening to this podcast to make sure they have in place to make sure they can measure the true ROI for their AI long term? How do they make sure they have that measurement framework in place?
So there are multiple levels you can still put some measurement in place. On the business level is the jobs to be done. What are your company's OKRs? Right? Do you have OKRs? Are your OKRs actually being moved in a faster way or more cost efficient way because of AI? That's the highest level. And then the lowest level is, are you measuring if your AI agent is performing in an efficient way? Right? So internally, we have the framework. We have 4 layers. We call this agent KPI. We know that if the agent is performing in a cost-efficient way. So from that level to company strategy level, is it moving the needle? There is an entire hierarchy of how do you kind of point your AI investment to the ultimate business outcome.
Dan, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you were looking for that playbook or framework, that 4-level framework. Is that available?
It is, yeah.
Tell our audience where they can find that.
I plan to publish a long form blog just in the next few weeks. So when it's out, I'll make sure I send you the link.
And I recommend everyone listening to follow Dan Zhang on LinkedIn, right? As she's this Chief Business Officer and Chief Financial Officer. And I'm going to ask her one more question before I let you go. You mentioned about the anxiousness or insecurity of employees, how AI is going to roll out and how it's going to impact me. Do you have any advice to those, especially the earlier career, but even mid-level managers? What can they do to make sure their role is safe and growing in an AI first world?
Well, first of all, you got to know the table stakes, right? So all the foundational capabilities, what AI can do, like be fluent in that. I think the second is very urgent more than ever to become the original thinker. So become the one who owns the question, not just the answer, because anyone can pull an output now with the help of AI, but knowing whether to trust it and knowing what to even ask as a follow-up, that becomes a rare skill from the ICs to the managers. So train your own brain and start to come up your more new ideas that is from you, not the AI. You can use AI as a thinking partner to kind of refine your skills, but you still need to be the first point to come up with them. So I think that just answering the question, you're handed and you will for sure be automated. Right? But if you own the questions, then you will still be the one leading AI and lead your team with AI, not the other way around.
Dan Zhang, Chief Business Officer, Chief Financial Officer at ClickUp. I cannot tell you how great of a way that was to end this podcast. And I can't wait to see how the 100X org mandate rolls out for ClickUp. Great to talk to you.
Thank you so much, Ray.
Bye-bye.